It is a beautiful day out, isn't it?
Hello. Anyone there?
Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah, who is this? John, listen to me. You have to save the world. No time to explain what happened. Just know that you have to review Frequency to save the world. To save the world, I have to review Frequency? Alright. No, I'll do it. It's no problem at all. I love Frequency. Real quick, Future John, do I still look good? No, of course you look good. Come on, you're you. You've never looked bad a day in your life. No, I always knew it. Come on. We're handsome guys. No, go review Frequency, please. The world's gonna end. I know.
I love you, son. I love you too, Dad.
Frequency came out on April 28, 2000 and is directed by Gregory Hoblit and written by Toby Emmerich. It's going to be the first in our new underrated film series. And I chose to start with Frequency because I think Frequency is the most underrated film of all time, in my opinion, of course. And the reason is this movie holds a special place for me. I first saw this movie in 2000 on TV when I was a kid, after it had already been released in theaters, didn't know a thing about it, and it just hooked me. Now, given, I'm a big fan of movies that play with time as a movie trope. That is my big thing. I'm almost a sucker for any of them, even if they're bad. So, take for what I say with a grain of salt. But a lot of people I know do love Frequency, but nobody ever talks about Frequency anymore. I don't know why, if it's just gotten lost to the test of time. But even back then, it just didn't feel like a big movie. Now, this is a movie that had a $31 million budget and made $61 million at the box office, so people did see it. It also currently holds a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's not like it was a badly reviewed movie either, but yet for some reason, this movie has been forgotten, and I'm curious why, because it is a really good movie. So if you don't know about Frequency, Frequency is a movie about a firefighter in the 60s who, through some sun flares, has been able to contact his son in the 1990s, or 1999, 30 years later, and they both live in the same house. The younger Sullivan, John Sullivan, played by Jim Caviezel, if you remember him, he was the star of The Passion of the Christ. He was a big thing in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then the older Sullivan, Frank Sullivan, played by Dennis Quaid, is speaking to him through a ham radio that is being... Basically, it's allowed them to connect because of sun flares that we see throughout the movie in the sky. This movie sets up something that you wouldn't think. You would think this is going to be a family drama where, a father and son reconnect because the older Sullivan, Frank, has died in a fire the next day after they first talk in 1969. So they actually, father and son, haven't spoken in 30 years if you go from it from the younger Sullivan side. And this is incredible to both of them that they can even talk to each other. First of all, Frank does not believe his son, and who would? If somebody contacted me on the radio right now claiming to be my son 30 years in the future, I would just blow them off and be like, you're out of your goddamn mind. How am I supposed to believe that's you? Nobody in their right mind would believe it. But he proves it with the 69 Mets World Series, and that's another big connection for me with this movie, is the Mets. I live in New York. I am a Met fan. So seeing the Mets when they're good is always fun, especially the 69 Mets. Those are the amazing Mets that they keep talking about. Now, I don't really have a personal connection to them, and neither does my father. My father's a huge Mets fan too, but he's more of an 86 Mets fan kind of guy. So, and for me, in 2000, the Mets actually made the World Series and lost to the Yankees. So go figure. Also in this, so you got that New York connection that really works for me, which actually brings me to my first negative of this movie, and it's very noticeable early on, and that is Dennis Quaid's Queen's accent. It is pretty bad. Now, thankfully, I guess not really great acting, but throughout the movie he kind of drops it a lot, or he's in and out of it. It's not as noticeable, but it's still pretty bad, and back in 2000 I didn't really care that much, but last night when I rewatched it for this, I was like, that's pretty noticeable. I don't know if they should have did that. It feels very forced. But anyway, it doesn't take me out of the movie in any way. But yet, this movie takes a crazy twist or a crazy turn that they don't really bring up other than on the radio you can hear in the very beginning them talking about the Nightingale murders, which is a man who's killing nurses. It's a serial killer. Now you would think, okay, this movie isn't a serial killer movie, but it is. It's a mystery serial killer movie. Basically this movie is a crime, drama, thriller. It's a bunch of stuff all rolled up into one, and it actually works. Somehow blending all these genres works for this film. You get, and especially since you're playing with time, because that Frank dies, because Oh, guys, we're spoiling the hell out of this movie. It's a 22-year-old movie, just so you know. Frank dies in that fire. That causes a ripple effect where his wife, played by Elizabeth Mitchell, didn't go to work the next night because her husband just died. She actually ended up, because she went to work, her husband came and visited her at the hospital, and she ends up saving a serial killer who's also a cop. Go figure. So everything's just connected. And I love things like that. I can't explain to you how much I love time loops and how, even multiverses, how the littlest thing could just set off a chain effect, because this guy had only killed 3 people, and now because she saved him, he ends up killing 10 people. And also one of those people was being her. Either way, or old little Johnny Sullivan was going to lose a parent no matter what. And unfortunately, in this scenario, it ends up being his mother. But because Mr. Sullivan and little Johnny Sullivan, or Little Chief, they can communicate to each other, they're going to solve this mystery, and they are going to figure out who the killer is due to future technology, and Johnny feeding information that he has from the future with help from their friend Satch, played by the great Andre Braugher, who is most famous right now for playing Captain Holt on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which you haven't checked out. It's great, and he's amazing in it. And he's also really good in this movie, and you can see the seeds that he laid for his Brooklyn Nine-Nine character in this. I just love that whole relationship with him and Johnny, how they, because, his father's a fireman, but yet he's close with Satch because he always wanted to be a cop, Johnny. Even though he gets some classic cop movie tropes, he's a drinker in the future, and, his girlfriend in the beginning of the movie is leaving him because, he's not connected emotionally, and a lot of it, I guess they're implying, is because his father died, and, he lives in the same house. He's still got his friend there, who he's still friends with no matter what. He's got his own son. The push and pull in this movie, it really does get to you emotionally, and then on top of that, with the time stuff, it really works very well. And then you get enthralled in the Nightingale murders. It really becomes a thriller, especially in this late second, early third act, when they finally start to, because Frank is trying to stop this killer. In 1969, technology isn't the way it is, so this guy's going around killing. Frank's following this guy, and it looks more like he's stalking the people that are being killed, so it comes up. Even his friend Satch is it starts to think it's him, and even arrests Dennis Quaid and brings him into the police station and says, we got all this evidence that it's you. And they're not going to suspect the cop, especially in the 1960s, there's no way. And, he's got everything working in his favor. Frank has to, explain to them what is going on, and then we get a great editing. Some great editing because Frank explains to Satch what's going on. I'm talking to my son Johnny in the future. Little Johnny, who I'm talking to him right now in the future, and he's telling me everything that's going on. I know who the killer is. I can prove it. All you gotta do is watch the Met game, and I will show you exactly what is going on right now. And he tells him everything that's gonna happen in the bottom of the 6th and the 7th inning, and they're cutting between past Satch is now at the diner with the mother, or Frank's wife, and they're talking, and he's starting to hear the game going on, and they're cutting between that and in future with John, what he's doing and trying to stop the killer. And that was just some fantastic editing, some great thrilling moments that really, you build that tension perfectly. And, for a movie that's forgotten, they really did a good job with this. I do think, though, the reason why this movie has been forgotten, and one of the reasons, is it is very cliche. There is a lot of movie tropes that you've seen in 1,000,001 other movies. They don't really play with, anything new. I don't think they added a lot other than it just being a fun little thriller from the 90s with a great, with an emotional heart. I think the heart of this movie is what carries it. I knocked Dennis Quaid's accent, but he's great in this movie. Jim Caviezel is awesome in this movie. This is definitely my favorite of his performances. I'm obviously not a huge fan of his, but he did a great job. He nailed it. I already said how Andre Braugher, it's well acted, but there's just certain things, actually very much on the ending, I think they dragged it out too long. It's thought that Frank drowned this guy in the ocean and that was going to be the end of it, but really he comes back in the future and in the past. In the past he attacks Frank, in the future he attacks John, and at the same time. I wouldn't have put that in if it was me personally. I would have stopped it in the boat, and then I would have just pushed past it to them playing the baseball game at the end before that amazing Garth Brooks song kicks in. Again, yesterday, a 22-year-old movie that I've seen 100 times, again, made me tear up. Obviously they're manipulating me with that Garth Brooks song, but it's great, and I loved it. As far as the film goes, it's probably, I feel like there is some nostalgia that kicks in for me, but I still think this is a really well-made movie. This guy has directed some very well-made movies. He directed this, he directed Fallen, he directed Primal Fear, which a lot of people remember with Edward Norton from the mid-90s and Richard Gere. It's a great movie, so it's I don't understand why this movie has been lost to the test of time. If you're a fan of Frequency, please let me know. If I was going to rate this movie, like I said, a lot of it is based on nostalgia for me and the fact that I'm a Met fan. I'm a fan of movies that play with the movie trope of time. I love movies like that. My favorite movie ever is Terminator, so it's built into me at my core. So for me, this movie might be a lot better when other people see it, but for me, I would probably still give this movie, even with its flaws and the flaws that I still enjoy, I would still give Frequency an 8 out of 10. And real quick, guys, the only physical media release of this came out actually almost exactly 10 years ago. This came out in 2012. This is the only physical media release we have of this. It's the only Blu-ray you can buy currently, and I don't really expect a 4K anytime soon. I don't think a lot of people remember this, even though there is a TV show based on it. But it is actually still a very good Blu-ray for 10 years. I didn't see too many issues with it. There's some, little minor things, but, and it's a bare bones package. It's nothing crazy on here. But honestly, if you can, grab it. I'm sure it's cheap. I don't think it's out of print, but I'll double check on that. But it is definitely, if you're going to check it out on here. It's usually streaming somewhere. You can definitely watch Frequency. Don't worry about that. It's a great little movie. But anyway, guys, thank you for joining me on this latest episode of Let's Talk. If you like these underrated movie series reviews, please drop what you think is the most underrated movie in the comments section below, and I will review it. Please, let me know. And as always, guys, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and tell all your friends.